timeline of all the events. But starting out, I was born into a church household. My dad's a pastor, so I'm a pastor's kid. You all know how that turns out. And so my dad, he like brought me to church all the time. We did like Bible studies on Saturdays, but he really just brought me to church to kind of like show the congregation that he had a good family and that like he had it all together. But then once we got home, everything wasn't all together, and everything wasn't as perfect as he made it seem. When we went out to public, he showed us off like we were the perfect pastor's kid, like we knew all the Bible verses, this, and this. But then we went home and we didn't actually really know God at all. And when I was a kid, I didn't really do good in school. I like got all C's and D's and F's, and I was just a class clown. Wasn't that good at sports, but I still tried. But then I had my brother that I grew up with as well. He got straight A's all the way up until the end of high school. He was star player on the football teams, and he wasn't a class clown. He was more held back and really deep into what he was doing at that time. And so pretty much he ended up being the parents' favorite. He ended up being everybody's favorite, and everybody kind of looked at him like, oh, he's so smart, he has everything together, but then looked at me like I was just stupid and I didn't really know what I was doing. And they weren't really wrong, but they spoke that over me, and that really influenced my behaviors as I started growing up. And so then moving along, once I got into middle school, I transferred over to station camp in my 8th grade year, and then in 8th grade I started smoking weed, as people do, I guess, and started smoking weed and started following around that party crowd and started really resenting my family and my parents and having a lot of anger that I just completely let out, like cussing at them, just letting it all go because I felt really neglected my entire life, and I felt like my voice had to be heard, and it felt like it wasn't being heard, speaking in a normal, calm manner, and so I would just start yelling. I would start cussing at all my family, everything, and having large outbursts, and so I started smoking, and then just kept smoking. I think it was like my freshman or my sophomore year. I was sitting there, and my dad had figured out that I was smoking, and he sat us there to have a Bible study on a Saturday because my parents were divorced, and so on Saturdays I would go over to my mom's house and stay at my mom's until Wednesday, and so on and so forth. And he would have Bible studies with us on that Saturday before we would go over. And he was praying us into the Bible study, and he was praying, and then he said to the Lord, he said, like, something along the lines of, Lord, please get this demon out of my son. And I snapped. I like busted open, and I felt so offended because I was like, my dad just said that I have a demon in me. And like I tried so hard to have a love for him in my heart, but like I resented him and I hated him so much just for the way that he had talked to me and the way that he had treated me and the way that I felt that he had neglected me. And so I just busted open and I started calling him things, any cuss word you can think of, I was saying it. I was yelling at him, pointing at him, and he gets up and he gets right in my face and he says, shut the hell up or I'll beat your you-know-what. And I just was screaming at him, just do it, because you claim to be this pastor, you claim to be this godly man, and here you are cussing right back at me. I'm not really seeing Jesus in you. And so I was just fed up. I was done with all of it. And then my brother separates both of us. My brother leads me to try and get me out of the house, but then my dad blocks the doorway. And my mom had heard us screaming and yelling, and so she comes running up with 911 on the phone. And then she comes into the doorway, and then my dad hits her, and then my dad hits her, and then but she still like pushes him away and drags my brother out the door. And I go and I like hit my dad, but I was like a scrawny little freshman stoner, So like it didn't really do anything. And then he pushed me off. Then I was able to get out of the doorway. And then police show up and arrest my dad. Then my dad goes and gives them all of my like bongs and stuff. And then they give me a paraphernalia charge. And then so I ended up having to take court classes and stuff like that. But then during the birthday that I had like right after that, I thought that it would be a great idea to just chill with all my friends. And oh, also by the way, I didn't end up going to jail. They just put it on my record and made me serve like court classes and stuff. But the birthday right after that, I thought it would be a great time to just chill out with all my friends and just smoke a bunch of weed. So we spent like $200 on marijuana, and we all just hung out and started smoking. And before like the real party started, I like sat with one of my friends and we were just like smoking or whatever. Then my brother comes in, and my friend, he goes, "Hey man, let Micah just." My brother's name was Micah. He was like, "Just let Micah hit the joint like once or twice." And I hated my brother because everyone liked him, so I felt that I had to hate him. So I was just like, no, because I didn't want him having any of my stuff. So I was like, no, bro, I'm not gonna let him smoke it. And then he persisted on, and I was like, all right, let him smoke it. And then my brother claimed that he had smoked before, but it ended up not being true. And so we let my brother smoke some of it, and then like he just straight up passes out. And then he gets up like 5 minutes later, and he sticks his hand in a candle and starts screaming about how he can't feel pain anymore. And he's like bawling his eyes out crying. And then he runs out the door and like runs out through the traffic to a gas station, steals some pizza, and then passes out at McDonald's. And me and my friends later on go out and we find him. And this event right here will make a lot more sense later of how this built a lot of guilt in my heart and a lot of shame and all this other stuff, because at this very moment is when, after me giving my brother weed, he took a complete 180 from being the straight A kid, smart kid, friendly kid, and to going down the same route that I was also going. And so then not that long after that, at the beginning of my junior year, my mom and my brother were away on a trip. They were on a fall trip to Florida. And I just threw a giant house party, told anybody, invite whoever they wanted over. I didn't really care. And the party was going really wild. One of my friends had invited some dude, and and he invited this dude, but right before he got there, me and a bunch of other friends were like, we're gonna go over to Wendy's. And so we just went over to Wendy's. Then my friend called me. He was like, hey, do you care if this friend that I invited still comes? He's a shroom dealer, and he said that he would give us anything that we wanted for free. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so he comes over, and then we're like, snap, he's finna get there. So we just said, screw the Wendy's. We're all just gonna go back as fast as we can. And then when we get there, he has this Dove chocolate bag full to the brim of these chocolates. And he said, anybody that wants one or two, they can have it free, but they have to eat it here tonight, and they can't take it anywhere else. And I didn't hear how much he said was in it, but I was ignorant and arrogant, so I was just like, all right, I'll take one. I went and ate the whole thing, and then I saw like my other friends who are more experienced with these psychedelic drugs. They broke it in half and ate half of it, and then they all stare at me. They're like, bro, did you just eat the whole thing? I was like, yeah, was I not supposed to? And then they said it was like, bro, there's like 4 grams in it or something, which is crazy for psychedelics. For shrooms, for someone's first time, it's like way too much. And they were like, wow. And then so the night goes on, and I start literally like losing my mind. Like I was getting really hot, and everything was getting really heavy, and like I I just felt pure darkness. I felt pure sadness, and like where my heart was, I had never felt anything like this before, and I was incredibly scared, and I was just like asking people for help, but everyone was just trying to party and chill, so nobody was helping me, and um, and I didn't know this then, but you're not supposed to try and sleep when you're on psychedelics because you can't sleep, so you'll fool yourself into thinking that you're asleep. And then when you wake up in like 30 minutes, like you won't notice that you're tripping still. And so you'll like go crazy. And so I go to try to go to sleep because I'm like, I can just sleep this off. And other people had also told me that I should just try and sleep or something. And then I go and I I go try to sleep, and I started getting like these visions in my head that at this time I can't even explain what they really were. I was just getting crazy, weird like spiritual visions, and then I get up the first time, and if you don't know how psychedelic drugs work, it's pretty much like you see things that aren't there, you hear things that aren't there, and stuff along those lines. And I get up for the first time, and I completely forgot in my mind that I had been throwing a party or anything like and all of that. And so I got up, and I thought somebody was breaking into my house, and I get up and I start like fighting all the people that was partying, and then like and then I pretty much black out, and then when I get back up, I'm in my bed again, and I wake up, and it was like 10 minutes later, and then it kind of keeps going in this tunnel of me trying to go to sleep and waking up over and over and over again. And eventually one time I woke up and nobody was there, and I started like hallucinating like extremely crazy. Of course, this entire time I was hallucinating, but at that time it was way like wilder. Like I would turn my head, the door would open, I would turn it back, it would close and stuff like that. Like it was really like this psychedelic, really scary experience. And when you're in that moment, it feels completely real and completely like absurd. You don't know what's happening. You forget that you took the drugs. So like it just feels like your entire reality is crashing on top of you. And and so like I kind of like started feeling like I needed to find God in that moment, but I really wasn't able to do it because I was tripping so far out. But my mom ended up because I had like when I was like blacking out and all this other stuff, I had like called my mom and said that I need help without I don't even really remember it, and she had called one of her friends to come and help me, and when I'm sober and I'm standing in front of my bed with like my pants half down and my blanket in my hand, and there's piss all over me, and I'm just like bawling my eyes out crying, and I didn't really know what happened, and um, and my mom's friend is sitting there holding my hand and like just telling me it'll all be okay. But like that was something that at that time I had never experienced before, and 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 then after that experience, I tried explaining it to my friends. Like I tried explaining to them like why they shouldn't do this because like they probably wouldn't be ready for it and all this other stuff. But all of them thought that I was like hyping it way over what it actually was. But then, even then, in my young arrogance, I was like, I've got to do this again because like it was so spiritual and out of this world. I'd never felt anything like it. Like I felt like I should do it again. And so time moves on, and I end up having more experiences that are like that, where I take acid or shrooms and I just like lose my mind and go crazy. But after like the sixth or seventh time, it stopped going like that, and I started encountering who now I know is Jesus. Then I didn't know what his name was, but at that time I was encountering the Lord, and none of my friends around me were. It was only me. We would all do shrooms or acid together, and I would experience him. And the first time that I ever did, I was sitting there. We had just taken shrooms or something. I was with a few of my friends, and we were playing Xbox, and then all I hear in my head is the words "seek my face," and I was like, okay. So I just stood up, started walking around my apartment, whatever, and then I get back to my room after like 5 minutes of just walking around, looking for a face. I guess I didn't really know what I was looking for, but I was walking around looking for it, and then I get back to my room and I'm sitting there and I'm on shrooms, so I start hallucinating really hard. I look around and everyone in the room's just smiling at me and nodding their heads, and it was just like very trippy. And then everything slowly starts getting really black and really dark. And then I see that I'm on a cross. That was the next thing. I was on a cross and I was crying. And I don't know why I was saying it, but I knew that I was saying it to God, and I was just repeating over and over again, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. That's all I was repeating. And then I said it a bunch of times, and then eventually all the darkness, it turns to gold, and then I see that I'm sitting in a chair, and all the darkness on my body, I saw the word shame all over my body, and then all the darkness turns to gold, and all the shame turns to glory. I see the words glory, and then everything turns gold, and then I feel a hand on my shoulder, and then I just feel the complete presence of the Lord, and he says, "Why are you crying?" And and then I completely stopped crying, and I felt the presence of God. I was like, "Why was I crying?" And stuff like this. And so pretty much I'm just sharing this part of my story because these things, these experiences really played a part in all of this together. And so I went down a route. I had probably tripped in total like 10 or 11 times on psychedelics and shrooms while smoking weed at the same time. And then February of 2022 was the last time I did shrooms. I did shrooms. It was on my birthday. And I was sitting there and I was tripping. And then Anthony texts me. He says, "Hey, bro, can I come pray for you?" And I was like, all right, I don't really have anything against prayer, anything against Christians, but I mean, I believe that miracles can happen and stuff. So he came and prayed for me, and then he left, and I grabbed my Bible and I read like Genesis 1 through 6 because I didn't really know what else to read, and I like took a walk and talked with the Lord, and then but after that time, I took shrooms because usually when you're on psychedelics, you feel like you go up and you get like on this really like high life type of thing, and then you feel that you come down. But then that time when I went up, I never felt that I came down, and then I ended up going through what I now know as schizophrenia. I started having schizophrenic episodes, and I started seeing things even when I was sober. Started seeing things and hearing things that weren't there. I started like experiencing really heavy spiritual warfare, and like I would see like demonic figures walking around. I would hear demonic voices talking to me, and I couldn't sleep. All that I would see when I tried to sleep was demonic visions. I would see hell. I would see death. I would see all these other things, and and then and then one night I go, and the spiritual warfare gets so bad that like I literally felt like my soul was dying and being crushed, and I just went and I was like, I need to take a walk. It was like 2 a.m. and so I go. I hadn't slept in days. I go to start opening the door, and then my mom comes and she's like angry because I had been like excuse me, I had been like really like distant the past few days. I wouldn't talk. I was pretty much like catatonic, if you know what that means. Pretty much like a state of like you won't really talk or eat. You'll just like kind of sit in a corner and do nothing. I'd been catatonic, and she didn't really know what was wrong with me, and I was really scared. I was shaking, and I go to open the door, and she comes out, and she's like mad. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I said in like scary. I said it like very scary. I said, "I'm going for a walk," and she says, "Too late. You can't go on a walk." And when I looked in her eyes, I saw a burning cross, and it slowly started turning upside down. And I just heard the Lord say, just listen to your mom. And I was like, all right. I didn't know at the time it was the Lord, but I listened to her. I just don't take a walk. But there's demonic things like that, demonic visions that I kept seeing. And then that same night I go, and and I had this demonic voice that was telling me I was a really bad person and that I deserved some sort of atonement. I deserved some sort of punishment. And so I go, and it led me to grab a knife, and I go and I grabbed the knife, and I was sitting there, and I was like preparing to cut myself, and just like fully just end it. But the Holy Spirit had stopped me, and then my mom came and she found the knife, and she was like, "Carmichael, what were you using this knife for?" And I was like, "I was going to hurt myself." And she was like, "Why were you going to hurt yourself?" And I was like, "Because I'm a bad person and I deserve it." And she was like, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And so she brings me to the ER, and I'm sitting there, I'm just crying, and then they go to lead me to the back. I was at the Hendersonville ER, so they have the door that leads to the rest of the hospital beds and stuff. And they go to lead me in, but once I start walking through the doorway, I get really scared, and I don't want to walk through the doorway. And I was at that time experiencing what I now know as drug-induced psychosis, which is it's pretty much like paranoia on the worst level that you can possibly think of. And so I was extremely paranoid. I thought I was going to die and all these other things. And so it took like a police officer and 3 nurses to get me into a wheelchair and then to wheel me back. And then since I was so paranoid, I thought they were like trying to hurt me or all these other things. And so um, it took a while for them to get anything I was feeling or anything, or for me to open up. And and so I stayed in that hospital that night, and they had diagnosed me with drug-induced schizophrenia and drug-induced psychosis. And then they ended up going and getting me the next morning shipped off to a mental hospital in Chattanooga. And so they sent me on this mental hospital to Chattanooga, and I traveled there. And this entire time, I'm like tripping out still, going through this schizophrenia phase. And so I stay at the mental hospital for 2 weeks. Towards the end of the 2 weeks, I met a Hebrew Israelite, and he was like asking me about my condition and stuff like that. And I was telling him how I was having these visions and dreams and stuff, and he was like, "Man, God must really love you if he's showing you visions and dreams. You should read the Bible." And I was like, "Read the Bible? What?" And he was like, he went and got me a Bible from the nurse's station, got me a Bible. He was like, "Yeah, you should read it." For some reason, I start off in Revelation, as one does, inside of a mental hospital. So I sat there, read Revelation. I was like, because I was so paranoid, I felt like I was going to die. I was like, I might as well see how it's going to end out if I ain't going to live to make it. And I sit there and read, and this Hebrew Israelite, he was like my Jesus in there, because he was the only person who knew anything about him. And so I go, and I was like, man, how do I pray? Because I was raised up like very religious, like get on your knees, pray type thing. And he's like, man, just talk to God like he's your friend. And he like did a little demonstration. He paced back and forth in his room, talked to him, did whatever. And I was like, all right, seems easy enough. Talked to him. So I started talking to Jesus. I read Revelation in the mental hospital, and then I got out, and they ended up prescribing me a bunch of different medications for my schizophrenia and my psychosis. And so I continued taking those, and then I slowly over time just started talking to Jesus more. When I got home, I really didn't read the Bible that much, but I was still enduring and going through so much spiritual warfare, and so many schizophrenic episodes and so many episodes of psychosis. And at this time, my mom still hadn't told me that I had been diagnosed with drug-induced schizophrenia. in drug-induced psychosis. I just I didn't really know what was happening, and so I was like still having these demonic dreams and visions and all these other things, and I was taking all this medication and stuff like that, and then and then I started like going to church with Anthony, and then we go to this church called Love's Way one day. It's over in Lebanon, right? It's over in Lebanon. I go to this church in Love's Way, and he does an altar call at the end. I think he says anybody with healing or anything come up, and so I go ask for healing, and I told him how I was on this medication and everything. He was like, all right, praise over me, fall down in the spirit, the whole Pentecostal deal. And then that day forward, I stopped taking my medicine. I just cold turkeyed it. And then my schizophrenic episodes, I would still have them, but I was learning how to seek the Lord through them and how to be able to not rely on what I see, but on my faith. And my doctor had told me that I may never recover from anything mentally. I may stay having a high level of schizophrenic episodes for the rest of my life. And if I continue taking the medication, it will be a miracle if they don't get worse. And yeah, but then I stopped having as many schizophrenic episodes the more I seek Jesus, and my psychosis eventually completely went away, and yeah, and so to this day, I really every once in a while I might have an episode, but right now I know Jesus so much that it doesn't even faze me or anything, and so I'm free from all that, and so yeah, I just wanted to share today where I've been, where I came from, and how I got here today, and I hope that some glory to God was shown through all this. Thank you all.
There are no announcements as we dismiss, other than everything gets to stay up. So let's just wipe down the tables. But as we dismiss, Mike, would you come up and if you're around Carmichael, let's lay hands on him. If you're a little bit farther away, hold out your hand toward him. I'm going to ask Mike to pray for him. Thank you for your boldness in sharing your story. I know it was hard, and we just want to cover you in prayer.
Father God, we just pause now to thank you for Carmichael and for his boldness and courage, and for you empowering him to stand up and tell us his story. Father, thank you so much for that, because there's many of us that are still in awe, and many of us have no experience with that whatsoever, and that was what you've done in his life so far, Father, is mind-blowing to us. Father, just thank you so much for him. Thank you for him joining our group, for being here with us. Thank you for Anthony helping him get through all that, for the prayers that he put up, and certainly for the Israelite guy, and for all the people you put in his path, for his mom, for all those that have helped him to steer him away from what Satan put in front of him, Father. And we're just so grateful for that, for him to be able to tell his story, and we're just so grateful for that. Thanks for all these men to be here. Thank you for everyone's willingness to be here and lean on Carmichael, and certainly to lean into him and try and empower him to move forward in his life. We just hope we can plant a seed that'll help him grow away from that and continue to grow the way you would have him grow. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. See you next week. Just a reminder, if you have donations, help out with Maui, there's a table back by the booth. Be strong.
But as you get older, you start to